interesting to see what changes.
Now, on Tuesday, November the 5th, India is planning to launch a rocket to Mars. Will it get there?
That's the big question. India has been a space power for a long time, but its space program since the 60s has focused on encouraging development. So it's done things like launch satellites for remote sensing to help agriculture or for communications, that sort of thing. It then sent a probe to the moon in 2008, and this is a probe to Mars. And the idea is that it's chiefly a sort of technology demo. It will help to inspire the next generation of Indian technologists and engineers. And the scientific payload will actually be very small. And they're having to use a smaller launch rocket than they initially intended. So they're having to do a rather clever orbital maneuver where they gradually raise the orbit of the probe around the Earth in the course of several burns and then send it on its way to Mars. This allows them to get this probe to Mars using a lot less fuel than they would otherwise need. So you could say this is an example of Indian frugal engineering and ingenuity, but it's fraught with risk because you have to do several engine burns. The other thing is that sending probes to Mars is itself very risky. Fewer than half of Mars probes in history have actually got there as planned. So it would be a triumph if they got there, and they then intend to take some pictures of the surface, and they have a methane sensor on board, and methane is associated with potentially with life on Mars if there were sort of microbes producing it. The trouble is there's a far more sensitive sensor on the Curiosity rover that America has on Mars right now, and it seems to have ruled out methane except in incredibly low concentration. So it's hard to imagine how the Indian probe would be able to add anything to that picture. So in the end, this ends up being a mission that's really not so much about science and is more about national prestige. And the other thing it may be about is beating the Chinese. The Chinese will be sending their first probe to the moon later this year, and so the Indians would like to be able to say, well, the moon, we've been there and done that, we've been to Mars.
Well, what better day to let off a rocket than November the 5th, Guy Fawkes Night?
Indeed. Well,